There are moments in life when the ground shifts beneath you without making a sound. No earthquake, no warning, just a single sentence, spoken low, that changes everything you thought you knew. I was 63 years old when that happened to me. Standing in my own hallway, holding a grocery bag in each hand, wearing the same boots I'd worn every day for 20 years. And I heard my son-in-law say, quietly to my daughter, "The deed's already in my name. The old man just doesn't know it yet." I didn't drop the bags. I didn't make a sound. I stood there maybe 4 feet behind him, in the shadow of the hallway that connects the mudroom to the kitchen, and I kept absolutely still. The way you do when a deer steps into a clearing and you're not sure what to do next. My daughter Elaine had her back to me too. She laughed a small, nervous laugh and said, "Marcus, just don't push it." And Marcus said, "I'm not pushing anything. I'm just making sure we're covered when the time comes." When the time comes. I was still holding the groceries when I stepped back out the way I came in, got in my truck, drove to the end of the block, and sat there for 45 minutes without turning the radio on. Just thinking, going back over the last 6 months, the way you inventory a workshop, pulling things off shelves, looking underneath, checking what was actually there versus what you only thought you saw. My name is Gerald Whitmore. I'm 63, retired from 31 years in commercial construction, and I own a piece of property in eastern Tennessee that has been in my family since 1962. 4 acres, a farmhouse, a detached garage I converted into a workshop, and a pond my father stocked with bass when I was 7 years old. It's not a mansion. It's not worth millions. But it is mine. And it has been mine since my mother passed and left it to me 11 years ago. And there has never been a single moment, not one, when I considered signing it over to anyone. So the question I sat with, at the end of that block, engine running, hands on the steering wheel, was this: how far along was this already? I want to tell you something about Marcus Dole before I go any further, because I know what you're probably thinking. You're thinking I never liked him, that this is a story about a father who resented his daughter's husband from the start. And I want to be honest with you and tell you that's not true. When Elaine brought Marcus home 4 years ago, I liked him. He was 38, worked in insurance, spoke well, knew how to shake a hand. He was attentive to Elaine in the early days in the way that a man sometimes is when he's trying to make an impression. I took him fishing twice. I showed him the property. I was, and I say this now with a kind of grief I didn't expect to feel, I was proud to have someone to show it to. Elaine and I had been close since her mother passed, 12 years before this story starts. It had been just the two of us for a long time. She was 41 when she married Marcus, and I didn't question it. I just wanted her to be happy. That was the thing Marcus counted on, I think, that I wanted her to be happy badly enough to stop paying attention. I drove home that night to my house, which is about 20 minutes from Elaine and Marcus's place, and I went straight to the lockbox in my bedroom closet where I keep important documents. The deed to the property was there. My name in full, Gerald Thomas Whitmore. It was dated, notarized, untouched. I held it for a long time. Then I called my friend Hank Baylor, who I have known for 40 years and who spent 30 of those years as a county clerk before he retired. I didn't tell him what I'd heard. I just asked him casually, the way you'd ask about the weather, how a person might go about checking whether a property deed had been altered or transferred without the owner's knowledge. There was a pause on Hank's end. "Gerald," he said, "that's not a casual question." I told him to just answer it. He did. The next morning, I drove to the county recorder's office and I pulled the public record on my property. There was a quitclaim deed filed 11 weeks earlier. I read it 3 times. My name was on it as the grantor. Marcus Dole's name was on it as the grantee. The notary seal was there. The recording fee had been paid. On paper, on official, filed, county recorded paper, I had signed over my family's property to my son-in-law nearly 3 months ago. I had not signed anything. I want to pause here because I know some of you are asking how this is possible, and I'll tell you what the attorney explained to me later. Quitclaim deeds are among the easiest legal documents to forge. They require a grantor signature and a notary. The notary in this case, I would later learn, was a woman named Sheila Grott who had processed over 200 documents at a mail and print shop in town. She had never met me in her life. Her stamp had been used, and I am being careful with my words here because this is what the investigators concluded without her full awareness of what she was certifying. She was not a sophisticated criminal. She was, from what I understand, someone Marcus had pressured and partially deceived. She lost her notary commission. That's a separate story. But on that morning, standing at the county recorder's counter, I was looking at a document that said I had already given away my land. I drove home. I did not call Elaine. I did not call Marcus. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and I thought about what my father used to say when something went wrong on a job site. He'd say, "Don't move until you know where all the load is." Meaning, before you pull anything out, before you start reacting, you need to understand the full structure of what's in front of you. Because if you don't, you might pull the wrong piece and bring the whole ceiling down on your own head. So I didn't move. Not right away. I called a real estate attorney named Patricia Gould, who had been recommended to me by Hank. I sat in her office 2 days later, and I laid out what I knew. She listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. When I was done, she said, "Mr. Whitmore, what you're describing is deed fraud. It's a felony in this state." She asked me whether I had any documentation, any text messages, emails, anything that indicated my son-in-law had planned or executed this. I told her what I had, a conversation I'd overheard, and a fraudulent deed on record. She told me that the conversation I'd overheard was significant, but that I needed to be careful. She told me not to confront Marcus or Elaine yet. She told me to let her begin the quiet process of building a case, contacting the recorder's office, flagging the document, initiating an investigation while I went about my life as normally as I could. "The worst thing you can do right now," she said, "is let him know you know." That was hard advice to follow. I'm going to be honest with you, that was the hardest 3 weeks of my life, including the year I lost my wife. Because at least then I knew who to grieve. This time I was sitting across from Marcus at Sunday dinner, watching him cut his steak, listening to him talk about a fishing trip he wanted to plan for next spring, and I was thinking about the fact that this man had, at some point, sat down and decided to steal my mother's land. I watched Elaine during those dinners. I watched her carefully. And this is the part that I still haven't fully made peace with. Even now I could see it. Small things. The way she'd changed the subject when the property came up. The way she didn't quite meet my eyes when I mentioned something about the workshop or the pond. She wasn't the one who'd done it. But she wasn't entirely in the dark either. I didn't know how much she knew, and I wasn't ready to find out yet. Patricia was moving quickly on her end. The county recorder's office opened a formal inquiry. The notary, Sheila Grott, was contacted. And here is where the situation began to unravel for Marcus in ways he hadn't anticipated, because Sheila Grott, once she understood the legal exposure she was facing, did not protect him. She gave a full statement within 48 hours of being contacted. She described exactly how Marcus had presented the document to her, what he had told her about why it was urgent, and the fact that she had processed it without the grantor present a clear violation of notarial procedure, because Marcus had told her the grantor was elderly and unable to travel, and had already signed in advance. She had believed him. She shouldn't have, and she knew it, and she cooperated completely. That statement was the thread that unraveled the rest of it. When the investigator pulled Marcus's records, his phone, his email, through the legal process that followed, they found a conversation between Marcus and his brother, Danny Dole, that had taken place 8 months before I overheard anything in that hallway. In it, Marcus described the property, estimated its value, and wrote, and I'm paraphrasing because I was given a summary, not the full text, something to the effect that once the deed was handled, there was nothing I could legally do about it because I was old and alone and unlikely to catch it before it was recorded. Old and alone. I've thought about those words more than I'd like to admit. I was not contacted by the investigators until they had enough to move on. Patricia had coordinated with the district attorney's office and made sure I was informed at every stage. On a Tuesday morning in November, Marcus Dole was arrested at his office, charged with deed fraud, forgery, and filing a false instrument, all felonies. I was not there. I was at my property, in the workshop, replacing a hinge on the door I've been meaning to fix for 2 years. Elaine called me 40 minutes after he was taken in. I let it ring. I want to tell you that I answered and had some clear, honest conversation with my daughter that day. But the truth is, I sat on that call and I let it go to voicemail, and then I sat there for a long time listening to the sound of the trees and the faint noise of the pond and thinking about my father, who built the dock on that pond himself, who is buried 20 miles from where I was sitting. I thought about what he would have said. I think he would have said the same thing he always said. You already know what's right. You're just working up to it. I called Elaine back that evening. The conversation was long and it was painful, and I'm not going to give you every word of it, because some things belong only to the people in the room. What I will tell you is this. She said she had known about the deed. She said Marcus had told her it was a way of protecting the property, that if something happened to me, having the deed already transferred would avoid probate, would make things simpler. She said she believed him. She said she didn't know it was done without my knowledge or consent. She cried. She said she was sorry. I listened to all of it. And when she was done, I said, Elaine, I need you to understand something. A man who tells you that stealing from your father is actually protecting your father, that man is not someone who is on your side. He is someone who needed you to believe a story so that you would not ask questions. And it worked. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, Dad, I know. 2 words. But they told me what I needed to know about where she stood. Marcus's attorney attempted a plea arrangement early in the process. The DA's office accepted a negotiated outcome: 3 years probation, mandatory restitution, a permanent bar from serving as a trustee or executor in any estate proceeding in the state. No prison time. I want to be straightforward with you. I was not satisfied with that outcome. I don't think 3 years probation reflects the deliberateness of what he did, the timeline of it, the way he sat at my table and talked about fishing trips while that deed was sitting in the county recorder's office with my forged name on it. Patricia told me that the DA's office weighed several factors, including Sheila Grott's cooperation, which reduced Marcus's ability to contest the core facts, and the caseload of the court. I understood the reasoning. I didn't have to like it. What I could control was the civil side of things. The fraudulent deed was vacated and expunged from the record. The property is mine again, unambiguously, with a full legal history of what occurred attached to it, so that there is never any question. Patricia filed a civil suit on my behalf for damages, legal fees, the cost of the investigation, and what is called unjust enrichment damages, reflecting the value Marcus attempted to extract. That suit was settled. I will not tell you the amount because it's not the point. The point is that every avenue Marcus thought he had closed turned out to be open. Elaine filed for divorce 3 months after the arrest. I did not encourage her to do it, and I did not discourage her. It was her decision, made in her own time, and I think it was the right one. She's living in an apartment on the east side of town now. We have dinner on Sunday evenings, most weeks. The conversation is careful sometimes, still a little bruised, but she is there, and I am here. I had one conversation with Marcus's father, a man named Robert Dole, who lives in another state and called me after the arrest to apologize on his son's behalf. He sounded like a decent man who was ashamed in the way a person is ashamed when they see clearly, too late, the shape of something they raised. I told him I appreciated the call. I meant it. I don't carry anger toward Robert. Whatever Marcus became, he'd had plenty of time to become it before he ever walked into my life. Here is what I want you to take from this, if you take nothing else. I am 63 years old. I live alone. I have gray hair and bad knees, and I go to bed most nights before 10 o'clock. Marcus looked at all of that, and he saw someone who wouldn't notice, who wouldn't fight back, who would be confused and overwhelmed and outmatched if he ever did figure it out. He built his entire plan on that assumption. He was wrong about every single part of it. The property is mine. The deed is clean. The workshop door swings smooth on its new hinge. The bass are still in the pond, same as they've been since 1962. And on a clear morning, when I walk down to the dock my father built, and I stand there with a cup of coffee watching the light come up over the water, I feel something that takes me a moment to name every time. It's not triumph, exactly. It's something quieter than that. It's the feeling of still being here, on your own ground, after someone tried to take it from you and failed. My father would have called that enough. I think I'm starting to agree with him.